Welcome to the Explainer. Okay, let's jump right in with a huge question. What if everything you thought you knew about faith was built on the wrong foundation?
So today we're going to be diving into the core ideas from Miles Monroe's really powerful book, Rediscovering Faith. And he throws down this major challenge, right? He asks us to stop seeing faith as just, this fleeting feeling, and instead see it as the bedrock for a totally different way of living. And he kicks things off with something I think we've all felt. You know that feeling, the just relentless pressure of daily life? He's got this perfect phrase for it. He calls it the challenge of life being too daily. I love that. It's that non-stop grind, that cycle of demands that it never lets up, does it?
All right, so here's how we're going to break this down. First, we'll look at the problem he identifies, this crisis of belief. Then we'll get into his solution, which is a total paradigm shift. And finally, we'll see how this whole new way of thinking actually helps you navigate the tough stuff.
Okay, so let's start with the big problem. And this goes way deeper than just being stressed out. This is about what happens when all the systems we count on just fail. It leads to this deep, profound crisis of belief, especially in a world that feels so unpredictable. So Monroe breaks down life's challenges into two buckets. You've got the predictable stuff, right? The daily grind, paying bills, keeping your job. But then you have the unpredictable, the stuff that knocks you off your feet, losing a job, a loved one, getting sick, a business failing. And both of these, the predictable and the unpredictable, are constantly chipping away at our confidence. And this is where he makes a really powerful point. He says, look, losing your job or your house or even your money, that's not the worst thing that can happen to you. The real tragedy, the biggest loss of all, is when you just stop believing. And that is the core problem he's trying to solve. Because think about it, when belief is gone, hope is gone. And without hope, what's left? That fuel that drives you, the reason you persist, your sense of purpose, it all just evaporates. Life, in a way, loses its meaning. Okay, so what's the answer to this crisis of belief? Well, this is where Monroe totally flips the script. He proposes this radical idea that maybe, just maybe, we've been looking at faith all wrong. We've squeezed it into this box called religion when it was always meant to be something so much bigger.
Here's the big idea. He says the central message of the Bible isn't about religion, it's about a kingdom. And he means that in a very literal, political sense. I want you to picture a country. It has a sovereign government, a king, laws, a constitution, its own unique culture, and all of it reflects the personality of its ruler.
And the difference between these two things is just night and day. Religion, he argues, is basically a human system. It's full of rituals and rules that we create to try and reach up to God. But the kingdom? That's God's system. It's his government, designed to influence earth from heaven down. And that shift in perspective, it changes everything. You go from being like an employee trying to earn your keep to being a citizen with actual rights and a direct connection to the king.
All right, so if we're running with this idea that heaven is a country, a real functioning government, that brings up a really interesting question, right? How do you do business there? What's the economy like? What's the currency?
And this might be his most powerful metaphor of all. Faith, he says, isn't just some vague feeling in your gut. It's not wishful thinking. It is the official, legal currency of the kingdom of heaven. It's literally the money you use to get anything done. And when you think of it like that, a famous verse like this one suddenly sounds totally different. It's less like some mystical saying and more like a basic rule of economics. It's simple, really. If you walk into a store without the right currency, you can't buy anything. You can't transact. You can't access what's available. This just turns our whole idea of wealth completely upside down. In this kingdom economy, being poor has nothing to do with your bank account. Poverty is a lack of faith. I mean, just think about it for a second. You could be a billionaire, but if you have no faith, you have zero currency to buy peace in a crisis, or purpose when things feel meaningless. You're spiritually bankrupt. But here's the catch. This currency, this faith, it doesn't have any real proven value until it goes through a crucial process. It's like a new engine or a piece of tech. You don't just ship it out, you have to stress test it first. Monroe is really clear on this. Untested faith isn't really valid faith yet. It's just a claim. It's like a company saying their product is tough, but they've never actually tested it. So the trials and tests you face, they aren't meant to destroy you. They're there to prove that your faith is the real deal. And this just perfectly explains the whole point of hardship. Going through tough times isn't a sign that your faith is weak or that it failed. No way. It's the opportunity to prove just how strong it is. Kingdom faith isn't a magical umbrella to keep you out of the rain. It's the unshakable foundation that makes sure your house is still standing after the hurricane passes.
A perfect example of this is the story of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. I mean, their faith wasn't just some quiet, private thing they kept to themselves. It was put on full display in this high-stakes, life-or-death moment of defiance.
So let's walk through this. First, they get a command, but they choose to obey their real king instead of the earthly one. Then they face the consequences, a blazing furnace. But here is the absolute key moment. They say, our God can save us, but even if he doesn't, wow. Their faith wasn't tied to a specific outcome. Their loyalty was absolute, no matter what. And their story shows us something incredible. Sometimes deliverance doesn't mean getting pulled out of the fire. It means God showing up with you in the fire.
So this amazing story really brings us to the final and maybe most important piece of the puzzle, understanding where, or more accurately, in who our faith is supposed to be.
Monroe points out a huge mistake that so many of us make. We end up chasing the resource, the good things, the miracles, the provision, instead of going after the source of all those things.
And the difference here is simple, but it's also incredibly profound. The resource, the blessing, it's temporary. It can fade, it can be taken away. But the source, the king, he is permanent, unshakable. And when you get that, your entire focus shifts. It stops being about what can I get from God, and it becomes about who is this God that I can trust. And that right there is the heart of kingdom faith. It's about anchoring yourself to the unchanging character of the king, not to the changing circumstances of your life. It's about putting your faith in the giver, not just in the gifts.
So this all comes down to one final really challenging question that Monroe asks, and that I'm going to ask you. Where is your faith really? Is it in the resources, the job, the relationship, the health, all the things that can disappear in a crisis? Or is it anchored in the one thing that can never, ever be shaken, the source himself? Answering that question, well, that's what it means to rediscover faith.